Hello, in this video I'm going to be explaining the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. Not the Douglas Adams version, but what is the actual meaning of 42 other numbers which will help me with this explanation. 114, 1066, and 196,883. I'm the Atomic Elvis, and I'm going to start with the clickbait, the number 42, but please bear with me as I go through the explanation of all those fundamental numbers.
The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42.
So the actual meaning of the number 42 goes back to Shakyamuni Buddha, also known as Gautama Buddha, and his enlightenment. I discovered it through the record of orally transmitted teachings by Nichiren Daishonin, where it breaks down the significance of what was said in the Lotus Sutra. Of course, if you're not Buddhist, there are all sorts of different elements to this video. However, the Buddha was very good at describing life. So the number 4 refers to the 4 sufferings. They are birth, aging, sickness, and death. The story goes that the prince, aged 29, left the palace for the first time via 4 gates, and on each of those gates he encountered one of those 4 sufferings. And it was this experience which led him to leave his future role as the Maharaja or king and go on his journey of discovery for enlightenment. So, number 4, the 4 sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death. The number 42 is made up of 4, 10, and 2, as per the Japanese way of reading, and the number 10 in that calculation refers to the 10 worlds, and I will describe those 10 worlds for you now. The 10 worlds are 10 conditions of life which everyone possesses and which we experience from moment to moment. They're broken down into 6 lower worlds which arise automatically from our lives in response to external surroundings. And then we have 3 of the 4 remaining worlds which are developed through how we interact with our world around us. And the 10th world is considered Buddhahood, which is a condition of pure, indestructible happiness. I'm going to give you a bit more information about all of them. If you want to skip this part, you can do, but I do think it is very useful to understand what those 10 worlds mean. So the lowest world is hell, devoid of freedom and with very little physical or mental energy. Second is hunger, so an insatiable desire for food, power, wealth, fame, pleasure, and so on. The third world is animality, and here we are looking at a condition where you are governed by instinct, with no sense of morality, living only for the present moment. Next up, anger, condition dominated by a selfish ego, competitiveness, arrogance, and a need to be superior in all things. We then go up a notch from the 4 base paths to humanity or tranquility. So a tranquil state marked by the ability to reason and make calm judgments. As you can see, this is a step up from those 4 base worlds, but it still is a very unstable state. The last of the lower worlds is rapture or heaven, a condition of pleasure experienced when your desires are fulfilled. In a lot of religions, the concept of heaven and rapture and having your desires fulfilled is considered the ultimate thing, but here we're looking at the 10 worlds as described in the Lotus Sutra and by Nichiren Daishonin. And in this system, heaven is something which is temporary and easily disrupted by even a slight change of circumstances. So we move from these lower worlds and up to the higher worlds in Buddhism. A bit more explanation of that on this slide. For the 6 worlds discussed together, referred to as the 6 paths, describe states of life easily influenced by external circumstances. So the aim of Buddhist practice is to transcend these 6 paths and build a self-determined happiness that is not controlled by your environment. And we're going to move on to the 4 noble worlds, which show how you can do that. The 7th world, the first of the 4 noble paths, is learning or voice hearers. And here we are able to get out of the 6 lower paths when we are learning something new, whether it be in a school or learning from life. If we apply learning to whatever situation we find, then we are able to elevate that situation into a better, higher state. The 8th world, realization or absorption. So here we are talking about a state in which your observations, efforts, and concentration help you to realize something about yourself, and it is closely linked with learning. For Bodhisattva, the 9th world, I have chosen a picture of Daisaku Ikeda, the 3rd president of the Soka Gakkai, a lay Buddhist organization. Daisaku Ikeda embodies the concept of Bodhisattva, somebody who not only aspires for personal enlightenment, but devoted himself to relieving the suffering of others through compassionate and altruistic actions. It must be stated as well that in order to achieve the highest level, the 10th world of Buddhahood, you must go through the world of Bodhisattva. You must devote yourself to relieving the suffering of others. And to round out the 10 worlds, we have the highest possible state, as according to these teachings, which is Buddhahood. This is a condition of pure and indestructible happiness, and it's perfect and absolute freedom. We move on and look at the mutual possession of the 10 worlds, which is an important concept to consider when thinking about the aspect of the highest world of Buddhahood, because each of those worlds contains all of the others, and it's a quite simple explanation that if you are in a state of anger, then you can use at the same time a state of learning, a state of realization, a state of Bodhisattva or Buddhahood to transform that state, that lower state, into a higher state, therefore maintaining, even in a moment of anger, the state of Buddhahood, for example. So in the number 42, 10 symbolizes the 10 worlds, and there's lots more you can learn about those 10 worlds if you care to go and study more of that about that for yourself. I do recommend it. I am going to go back to the significance of the number 10 when I examine the number 1066. However, I want to keep this segment as closely aligned to the significance of 42 as possible, and so we move from the 10 worlds to the meaning of the number 2. The number 2 refers to the difference between delusion and enlightenment, and it must be noted at this point about the non-duality of delusion and enlightenment, that delusion and enlightenment, although different in aspect, are one and the same in their essential nature. A bad cause or influence gives rise to delusion, a good cause or influence to enlightenment. They both arise from the essential nature of life. I hope you've got something out of this video so far. There are many videos on the internet about the number 42, and yet none of them has given you the answers which I have. So if you have gained something from the video so far, please give us a like and subscribe. This finishes the instructions about the number 42, and yet I have not covered the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. There are some more numbers to cover, so give us a like and a subscribe. Hit us up with a comment if you've got any more information about the number 42. But now, 2 final thoughts about 42. And first of all, it's unclear whether Douglas Adams, the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, had any clue about the significance of the number 42. He was good friends with Lewis Carroll, the author of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and numbers also play a part of that story. Both of them were Oxford compatriots, and Oxford has secret libraries with hidden books which are only accessible to the very top of university deans and the like. I've tried to make this information available for you, even though I haven't seen it myself. I do have a good knowledge of this subject and the other numbers which are still to come. The last fact about the number 42 is that it was Elvis's age when he died. Your eyes don't deceive you. That's not a picture of Elvis Presley. That is myself, the Atomic Elvis. And I'm going to explain some more numbers which I think are very pertinent to the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. And some of those numbers, well, they do correspond to the king himself. Do keep listening to find out more. The next number in this meaning of life, the universe, and everything is the number 114, 114. Thus far, I have only mentioned Buddhist philosophies. However, this video is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, and for over 1 billion humans around the world. The Quran is the fundamental text explaining the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. I will be covering Hinduism and Christianity as well as part of this video, as part of these numbers. However, the 114 surah in the Quran are very important, not only because of their content, which if you have not read the Quran, regardless of what you believe in, I do recommend it. It contains the instructions for life. However, it is the number which I am concerned with. These were the revelations of God to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, over a 23-year period. There were exactly 114 revelations from God, aka Allah. So This is a very important text, very important for all the world, as all the world, whether they know it or not, are indeed Muslim. A quick bonus number is the number 33, and 33 in Islam is the age you will be in Jannah, which is paradise or heaven. Everybody will be aged 33. It's meant to be the prime age of your life. It was the age that Jesus was when he died, supposedly at 3 p.m. on the 3rd of April. It's also the number of vertebrae we have in the human spine. So 33, a link there between Islam and Christianity. So is 114. You see, my major problem with Christianity is not necessarily that I don't believe in the Bible, but I know for a fact that the Bible has been butchered by all sorts of people that we don't really want to trust. So a study of history shows things like the Council of Nicosia, for one example of where texts were removed and added to the Bible. However, one text which didn't make it into the Bible and is considered questionable anyway is the Gospel of Thomas, a name which means twin. Is described as potentially Jesus's twin brother, which does cast a very big amount of doubt over the things we are taught in Christianity. But also, the Gospel of Thomas contains these sayings which kind of go against the dogma of church, cross, priest, and are, I believe, there to set people free from what is within themselves. So the first quote that I've chosen, it says, his disciples said, "Show us the place where you are, because we need to look for it." And he said to them, "Anyone who has ears to hear should hear. Light exists within a person of light, and they light up the whole world. If they don't shine, there's darkness." So with this, we are looking very much at the inner transformation, not a ceremony, not dying on a cross to get salvation, but that we can get salvation from what is within us. We can become beings of light. Similarly, in the 70th of 114 sayings of the Gospel of Thomas, we have the saying Jesus said, "If you give birth to what's within you, what you have within you will save you. If you don't have that within you, what you don't have within you will destroy you." So again, here we have the Gospel of Thomas talking about Jesus and saying about what is within us. And this is a very important consideration in Buddhism, in Islam, but salvation in the Christian world has been indoctrinated to say it is something which happens when you die, salvation by death on the cross, salvation, heaven being something that you find outside of you. And yet here we have a very different picture. I want to touch briefly upon the concept of God for any atheists out there. And so the following quote by Einstein, which was made in conversation with the Indian philosopher and teacher Rabindranath Tagore, says how everything is determined, the beginning as well as the end, by forces over which we have no control. It is determined for the insect as well as for the star. Human beings, vegetables, or cosmic dust, we all dance to a mysterious tune, intoned in the distance by an invisible piper. In a previous video, which I can't share due to copyright, I had a lot of tunes which were determined about my life before I came into being, and during my life, music which has followed me around. If you listen to the Quran being sung by a wonderful imam, then you will hear that it is God's music, that it calms the soul, that it has all sorts of wonderful properties as well. Similarly, in the Buddhist world, we have the Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, which, when chanted, helps you to realize your inner transformation. When we talk about everything being determined, it is worth pointing out at this point that when you say my birthday in the American way, it is 114, the 14th of January, 114. When I moved to Tunisia, which I would go on to pronounce as Tunisia, I found out that the 14th of January 2011 was the start of the Arab Spring, a date in which I had celebrated my birthday along with 500 friends, having a great big party, because I was also leaving York, the Viking capital of England, to go and live in Italy. I've spoken more about myself in other videos. This is about the numbers, but this particular number does appertain to me, Tom the Viking. I did forewarn you that I would also mention Hinduism, and here is the link with Hinduism, sticking with the 14th of January, or 114, if we're reading it through the American system. It is celebrated in parts of India as a festival for Kalki. Kalki is the 10th avatar of the god Vishnu. There have been 9 previous incarnations who have walked the earth, avatars of the god Vishnu, and the 10th avatar is yet to come. He is the one who will end the current Kali Yuga and bring about a period of heaven on earth. I don't want to dwell too much on just the number 14. There are many links with that number, especially with it being a fairly low number in the order of counting. We look instead briefly at there being 14 generations from Abraham to Jesus Christ, and again, just a bit of a connection there between the number 14 and Christ. And on the slide, as you're looking at it, you'll also see a quote from the Quran. Surah 40, Ayah 11 says, "They will plead, O Lord, you made us lifeless twice and gave us life twice," which I do think indicates that there is reincarnation even within the Quran and the Islamic belief, although that does differ from some Islamic scholars and what they say, but it's there in black and white in the Quran. Talking of reincarnation, if you were born as I was on the 14th of January 1983, then you will have the exact same numerology, a 9 made up of a 2 and a 7, as Elvis Presley. You'll have the same horoscope, and that is every kind of horoscope you can imagine, from Celtic to Chinese, as well as the ones that we're familiar with in the West. all the same as Elvis Presley. Well, I, Thomas, was also a twin in the womb, just like Elvis Aaron Presley. So, if you believe in reincarnation, well, there's a chance that I was Elvis Presley. That's why I call myself the Atomic Elvis. And if you're keeping count, then and watching this in the year that it was produced, then you'll know that I am also 42 years of age, the same age that Elvis died at the time of making this. Let's hope I live a bit longer than he did, eh? Give us a like, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. We're going to move on from 42 and 114 to our next number. A very brief history of 1066 for those who are not familiar with it, maybe not born in England, because in England everybody knows about 1066. In 1066, England was invaded twice. First by some Norwegian Vikings who invaded in the north of England, which was still rife with Vikings, and in the south of England, Edward, who would later become known as the Conqueror, the eventual victor, invaded in the south. The King of England at the time defeated the Vikings, but then went down to Hastings, where he would lose an eye and die, as well as the invasion forces which would go on to establish the kings and queens of England for generations to follow. We also had Halley's Comet appearing in the sky.
Some people are on the pitch, they think it's all over. It is now. It's four.
And as usual, I want to give a slightly different perspective on the number 1066. You see, for me, I believe it is the key to the internet. 10 is binary code, and 66, the number of geopositional satellites needed to triangulate any place on Earth. Our number system, a base 10 number system, evolved in India, in Sanskrit. We can see similarities even to the shapes of the numbers. However, it was in the golden age of Islamic civilization when explorers like Ibn Battuta went out exploring the world with that mission, the first mission that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was given to read, to learn. They went and they read and they learned from India and took that information back to the first university in the world, El Karawan University in Fez, Morocco. They, at that point, moved to the number system which is the Indo-Arabic numerals, which we use. 10, of course, the number of fingers on our hands as well. 5, the 5 pillars of Islam, the 5 letters in the name Allah. Well, these Indo-Arabic numerals are part of this same puzzle. I'll make a couple more connections to how they evolved around the world. Those Indo-Arabic numerals, Sifr, Wahed, Neen, Talata, Arba, Hamsa, Sita, Saba, Tamania, Tisa. But in existential terms, what is really important is the difference between 0 and 1. Obviously, within the difference between 0 and 1, we have the concept of Allah, the concept of God. Is he nothing or is he everything? Is everything one or is everything nothing? and this also links in with other philosophies from Buddhism. When the Indo-Arabic numerals arrived in Italy, they weren't very well received because the church in Italy at the time considered them heresy to suggest that they could even be a zero, and that everything had to start with 1. I lived in Pisa for a very big part of my adult life. Talking of binary, my surname is Bins and my partner's name is Binny, and I do believe that there is a binary love story, an eternal myth story perhaps, in play between us. Well, Pisa was the location where Leonardo Pisano, a trader who traded out of the Pisan Empire, had travelled to North Africa after the invention of the Indo-Arabic numerals, and Leonardo Pisano, who is also known as Fibonacci, brought them to the European continent. They also looked at the patterns and numbers in plants as well, gestation periods, all those sort of things with the Fibonacci sequence. And when I say a large part of my life, it was actually 10 years that I lived in Italy, mostly consecutive years. Well, I did have my first spell in Tunisia in between 2 of those stays. 10 in Italy, if we go back to the Romans, was depicted by the letter X. And I was a big fan of Xbox growing up. Could it be that some of my consciousness got trapped in a box? Well, there are Egyptian mythologies that we can refer to. The tale of Isis and Osiris, where Isis went to Italy in the form of Cleopatra, and Osiris got trapped in a box by a person called Set. We can also talk about string theory, a theory written about in the History of Space and Time by Stephen Hawking in 1983. String theory has 10 dimensions. They will come into play later on in this video when we arrive at a latter number, but relevant to this theory of 1066, which I am telling you about now. And linking back to how it has been interpreted religiously and philosophically, it combines the energies of 1 being new beginnings and 0 being infinite potential, and this is crossed over in various other beliefs as well, such as the Mayan belief about the universe. However, 10 on its own would be rather flat. What we need are more numbers, and from space, if we want to be able to map the world, we need a triangular number, and that number is 66. So 1066 combined make up a computer system able to position everything and everyone on a sphere. Have you ever looked at the stars in the sky and seen the lines which connect them? Do you not realize that we are all part of an Indra's net? But are we also part of an internet? This is a theory. Those stars at night are best visible in places like Tatooine. Tatooine being in Tunisia, of course, where George Lucas filmed Star Wars, the first film in 1977 coinciding with Elvis Presley's death, the second film in 1981 coinciding with the birth of my sister, 2 years before me, and the third film released the year I was born in 1983. Jedi in Arabic, meaning grandparents. Will they return? Can they return if they are no longer with us? This is one of the deeper questions I ask myself. We find a connection between North Africa, Osiris. ISIS actually went to Tunisia as well, Carthage Empire. But Egypt, the place where she is most famous, we could say, and the Great Pyramid of Egypt is exactly 66 feet tall. We see connections with the Bible, where the Catholics in Council of Nicosia made the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, into 66 books. The Bible also containing another triangular 6-based number, 666, to be the number of the devil. Of course, when we do study numbers, we can look at how the Arabic language and the Aramaic languages, which were the languages spoken at the time, also had alphabets where the letters meant numbers in the same way like the Roman numerals are made up of I, V, X and C. Every letter of the alphabet had a different meaning, and 666 happened to be Emperor Nero, who was the Roman emperor at the time, the one famous for watching Rome burn and clapping. Thanks to the 66 geopositional satellites, we can look at the Earth from above and see all sorts of other images, make our maps onto the maps of the sphere. The technology, the 66 satellites help to create technology like TomTom and Google Maps. This image taken from Google Earth, and when you start looking at these things like I have done, then you can start to see different people have had different ideas about what they can see in these images. I, for example, can see in the sea, in the blue sea, the image of a hooded figure praying with hands together. I do talk more about these in my radio shows with music, which I hope to get the copyright permissions to share with you at some point. The World Wide Web, originally the ARPANET, a 1968-1969 creation used by military alone, went on to become the World Wide Web in 1983. There is a connection between the V in Vita and life, the W in Witan, the Viking word for wisdom, which was their word for life, and the W's in www. And we can also look at that W shape and compare it to the Arabic Talefa. The number 3 is the internet, World War III. Well, maybe 1983, the British invention of the internet. World War II fought, of course, between the Tommies and the Jerrys. The Tommies and Jerrys, World War II, World War III. Has it already begun? Well, if you're getting something out of this video, I do have some more videos that I'm hoping to get past copyright, and I might keep making more videos, uh, considering all sorts of different options. So please like, subscribe, and perhaps you want to share this with somebody who might be interested in these kind of things. As I am recording this, I am contemplating throwing in another bonus number at the end. So we move on to what will be the penultimate number, but one mentioned at the start. If you've been listening from then, I do congratulate you. It's turning into quite an epic video, but that is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. I'm looking forward to reading your comments as well, especially I know I've left out some details about the number 66, other details about some of the other numbers mentioned so far. I'm trying to keep this informative whilst relevant. So if you want to throw a comment about any of those other numbers, or just a hi, how are you doing, give us a comment as well. I am trying to combine what is considered fact with some elements of my theory as well, through the images and through what I have been saying. The next number, well, I do take a bit of a leap in this one, so you'll have seen the progression of facts throughout the video, whereas the next number contains a bit of my theory. We get on to a mathematician named John Conway. John Conway has his mathematical game of life and his YouTube video on that. Very informative if you are interested in these mathematical concepts. However, it is his mathematical discovery which is our next. His videos available on YouTube give a full breakdown of the 196,883 dimensions of the monster group. The monster group are full of so many dimensions that it contains within its nearly all of the other dimensions. And that is about as much factual information as I'm going to give on the combined number 1968-83 is how I choose to read it, with two very important years combined in those calculations. It was courtesy of my uncle, whom I call Uncle Scar, that I discovered the monster theory and the 196,883 dimensions. The first time I saw the monster dimension group, I was sure it was my number, because 68 was my number. 68 had been my number for a very long time. When I played American football, 68 was my number. I'd already written stories about 1968 and a boy born in 83 called Tom. I had done all sorts of research before I came across the monster group, courtesy of my uncle. 1968, a key year for many different reasons. The barricades in France and the comeback special. However, the comeback special linked to one of the philosophies that I had been writing about, combining different dimensions such as string theory. The 1968 comeback special has a string theory of its own because it has the correlation between the singer sewing machine and the singer Elvis Presley. Elvis, of course, an anagram of the word lives. So, in the Singer TV special, as it was aired at 9 p.m. on ET in the year 1968, well, we see these characters in the TV talking to one another in the commercials. And this is part of my big leap, this idea that we have come out of the screens, that we are creatures of light. And I welcome discussion about these theories as I continue to expand them further in future videos. So I think we will wrap things up here. I did say 1968-83 would be a penultimate number, and I have one final number for you. So let's move on to that one. Starting in 1983, the mobile phone. Well, as I placed the landline in my home, the news of another comet coming into our solar system broke on the internet. This was 2 years ago. It has been in mainstream news by now, but at the time I was first to find out about it, and I found out that it hasn't been in the inner solar system for over 3 million years. That it's 10 times bigger than the comet which we saw in the sky in 1066, Halley's Comet. So we have that connection between the start of life on Earth 3 million years ago when Lucy came out of Africa. And could it mean that 2031 is when the Kali Yuga will end and we will have heaven either on Earth or in some other format? I had already been called mito, Italian for myth, by the children who couldn't pronounce Mr. Thomas. And while I do love this third rock from the sun, the Moroccan roll of the world, is it a jailhouse? And is there something else beyond? Well, 2031 is coming, it's coming soon, and we will find out. Hopefully before then, we human beings can realise our own inner transformations, our own inner karmic journeys, and arrive at a happier, better place where the jailhouse is fun to be. So until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.